Many years ago, when I used to play the game called rugby, we used to have a position called a blind side winger. Now I know many of us are not familiar with rugby. Don't worry, I'll give a similar example in the game of soccer shortly. Now blind side wingers used to score very spectacular tries. I believe they still do to this day. Because when everybody else's attention was somewhere else, suddenly, out of the blue, the blind side winger would emerge, get the ball, and score under the posts before anybody could say, Allah, where did they come from? And I believe politically we're heading towards precisely such a situation. Let me give the soccer example very quickly. All the defenders' attention is right in the middle of the goal, where 2-3 people are marking the very most dangerous striker. And as the ball is crossed, all the attention is on this dangerous striker. Maybe some defenders are even holding on to his shirt, of course against the rules, but the ref has not seen. And then the ball is lobbed over all this attention, only to find a player, maybe even a defender, who has sneaked in on the blind side, the far post, and they rocket the ball home into the net. Goal. Nobody saw him. Nobody saw him coming. He was on the blind side of everybody, of all the defenders especially. Many people don't know this, but Bodaboda riders have been a key central part of political campaigns since the year 2013. Oh yes. And in 2022, even more so. Let me give you a quick example. There was a time some incidences involving Bodabodas in Kenya had started to raise quite a lot of concern. And this was the time when the hustlers versus the rest campaign had heated up. The incidences where Bodaboda riders walichoma lorry, even vehicles. And these incidences were rampant around the country. You have a small hiccup with a Bodaboda rider, you have a small misunderstanding, you have a small issue with a Bodaboda rider, it quickly becomes an issue of hustlers versus dynasties. And it doesn't matter if you're a driver driving your boss's vehicle, you're a dynasty. And therefore, you feel the wrath of the Bodaboda riders, the hustlers. Remember that? In fact, it reached a point where people started complaining that UDA should stop this hustler narrative, because it could cause chaos in the country. I'm sure you remember that. And the Bodabodas were very much hustler UDA supporters. But now the fallout is real, especially when information is emerging that the so-called hustler cabinet, because people are declaring their wealth, the so-called hustler cabinet is worth billions. And guess what? There's no Bodaboda rider there. There's no Mamamboga in that cabinet, as promised. Now, don't get me wrong. Had it been an Azimio cabinet, I'm sure it would have been the same, maybe even more. That's not my point. My point is, promises of the election, promises of the campaign period, coming back to haunt those who made those campaign promises. So much so that those who were supporting you previously now become a political threat to your administration. Karibu sana to my show, where we dive deep into this shell-shocking development. Now, if you're already enjoying my show, please remember to give me a like. I'll be very grateful. But for now, twende kazi. There are things in this life that may not be very easy to see until they hit you, until it is too late. You see, an analyst, any analyst, is supposed to see things well in advance, things coming from the blind side, things bound to blindside Kenyans and Kenyan politics. An excellent example of something that is brewing is the Bodaboda fallout with UDA. You see, during campaigns, Bodabodas were a very key part of the William Ruto campaign for the presidency. Actually, this can be traced right back to 2013 and the first Uhuru Ruto campaign for the presidency. Many of us will remember that Bodaboda riders, those people on motorbikes or motorbike taxis, for those not familiar with Kenya, were a key part of the Jubilee strategy in 2013. Of course, in 2013, Jubilee was a coalition. In 2017, it became a political party. You see, during a political campaign, anywhere in the world, there are those key audiences whom you focus on whispering as many sweet nothings as possible. If you get my meaning, it's normal in politics. You promise them heaven on earth. Now, during the 2022 presidential campaign, Bodabodas were promised very many things. They were promised cash to improve their businesses, to even buy more motorbikes, expand their business, make more money. Pesa mfukoni, if you remember. Money in the pocket, which greatly excited Bodaboda riders countrywide. And that's not all. The UDA campaign told Bodaboda riders that they would be part of the UDA government. Oh yes, I'm sure many of us remember that. Mama Mbogas also told they would be part of the UDA government. Of course, there was another more sinister motive in focusing on Bodaboda riders. Had Ruto's campaign not gone according to plan, the Bodaboda riders were going to come in handy in protests countrywide. That was the plan, but that is a story for another day. Now, a very important point to note at this juncture is that usually the time lapse between the campaign sweet nothings, the campaign promises, and the people realizing that it was all hot air is normally much longer than the case this time round. In 2013, it took 2 to 3 years for the Bodaboda riders to realize that actually it was business as usual. And in fact, the Jubilee government clamped down on Bodaboda riders using the home affairs or internal docket, when it was realized that a lot of criminal activities involved Bodaboda riders, and therefore there was a serious clampdown countrywide. And Bodaboda riders were up in arms. And some of them remembered the sweet nothings this same government had whispered to them. That time lapse was almost 3 years. But this time round, and of course the main reason are the hard times Kenyans are passing through. Because it is not hard to imagine that some of these Bodaboda riders had already started budgeting based on the campaign promises. Mtapata pesa mfukoni. And now, over a month into the new administration, they have realized things are not what they expected. And that is something that should concern all of us, not just supporters of the UDA party. And why should it concern all of us? It should concern each and every Kenyan, because the number, the volume of Bodaboda riders countrywide is huge. It is significant. This is a group of Kenyans you should not mess around with. No, it's dangerous. And that is why the opposition to the Ruto administration has been focusing on Bodaboda riders. I think now you can join the dots. Let me remind you, in case you've forgotten, recently, Baba focused on Bodaboda riders. He helped them buy fuel. Remember that? Barely 2 weeks ago. I believe now you can see just how smart that political move was. Because it was a political move. But what I'm trying to say in this video is that the disillusionment of Bodaboda riders, the discouragement, the feeling of being let down, indeed the feeling of betrayal amongst Bodabodas can very quickly, very easily get out of hand and out of control. Now, talking to Bodabodas on the ground, it is very clear that there is very stiff opposition to the UDA government. Bodabodas are very influential. They ferry most of us all over the place. And as they're taking us from point A to point B, we normally strike up a conversation. They strike up conversations with their customers. And therefore, we can confidently qualify them as opinion leaders. And if you want to change the situation in your country, if you want political change, you need to speak to the opinion leaders. And Bodabodas, you'll agree with me, based on what we have discussed so far, are very influential opinion leaders in the country called Kenya. And therefore the fallout with William Samoei Ruto's UDA government, Kenya Kwanza government, is real. And it is something where we should expect to see developments, political developments, in the days and weeks to come. In other words, they're bound to be singing the opposition song. They're bound to be singing the Raila song. They're bound to be singing the song of the vast majority of Kenyans who are feeling injured at the injustice. They want justice because the person they voted for to be president today is not president. The person whom the vast majority of Kenyans voted for did not make it to the presidency. Shall I say due to technicalities? I don't think I can put it any other way. That's the best way of putting it. Because it is widely said, it's not a secret in Kenya, that Wafula Chebukati, the IEBC chairman, and the Supreme Court made Ruto president, not Kenyan voters. Yeah, that's what everybody's saying. Bottom line, one day, many decades from now, when historians look at this period of Kenyan history, I am certain, in my opinion, that they'll say the fallout of Bodabodas with the UDA government was a major milestone. And indeed, Bodabodas ended up being a thorn in the flesh of the UDA government. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.